Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Just going to say the good breakfast was sponsored by the Soleimani family. Is it for?
Yeah, he had.
As you mentioned yesterday,
Yeah,
it could have been very dangerous, and Baruch Hashem, things worked out. So it should be like a korban toda to Hashem to give thanks, and Hashem should continue to protect him and take care of him.
Amen.
Okay, so we are in Parshas Emor, page Kuf, quoting a Midrash. Midrash Rabbah, the Midrash discussing the verse in Parshas Emor, which says, Shor o chesev o ez, if there will be an ox, a sheep, or a goat. The Midrash explains, Hadau d'chsiv, that is the meaning of the verse, V'lo yihye od lebeis Yisrael lemivtach, that this shall no longer be for the Jewish people as something they can rely on. V'chi shor nolad, and the Midrash continues and asks, how can you have a shor be born? It says, a shor, if an ox is born to you. Cows don't give birth to oxen. V'halo egel nolad. Cows give birth to calves. El mishum asu lahem egel masecha. Rather, because the Jewish people made for themselves a molten golden calf, kara kasu shar v'lo egel. Therefore, the Torah refers to this animal that the Jewish people are going to bring as a korban as an ox rather than as a calf. Ad kan lashono. This is the language of the Midrash. And the simple reading of the Midrash is that for some reason, here the Torah refers to it as an ox rather than a calf in order to avoid mentioning the word calf. V'sham b'medrash b'samach. But then there's another Midrash right near there. V'chima ra lasos shor rosh l'chala karbanos. Why did Hashem mention ox before mentioning any of the other animals that are going to be sacrificed? Amar Rabbi Levi, mashal lamatrona. Rabbi Levi quotes this medrash, this mashal, and then he says, Kach lefi she'umas ha'olam mona es Yisrael lomar asisem as ha'egel, because the nations of the world were calling the Jewish people out on the fact that they had made an egel. Lefikach nase shor rosh l'chol karbanos. So therefore Hashem uses the ox as the first of all the offerings. Lomar, to tell you, Shebadak HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'dvarim, that Hashem has looked into the matter, Hashem has completed his investigation, but lo matza b'hem mamash, and has not found the Jewish people guilty. And it seems like these two midrashim are contradicting each other. One seems to suggest that the reason why Hashem uses shor instead of egel is to cover up for us, to say when an ox is born, not use the word egel, so that not to remind. The other one says that Hashem uses the word shor in the Torah as if to say there is no crime of egel, and therefore there's nothing to worry about, so I'm not even going to call it an egel because there's no issue here. I'm going to call it shor instead. So uladidan nicha, I'd like to explain it based on a third midrash, the Isaba midrash. Al pasuk ra'o ra'isi as ani ami. The verse states, I have surely seen the impoverishment of my people. Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe, ata ro'a ri'a achas. Hashem said to Moshe, you only see one. This is while they were still in Egypt. V'ani ro'a shtei riyas, but I see two. Ata ro'a osam ba'im l'Sinai mikablim Torasi. You're picturing the Jewish people arriving in Har Sinai and accepting my Torah. V'ani ro'a osan mikablim Torasi. I see them, just like you, receiving the Torah. Zeu ra'o, that's the first I see. V'od ra'isi zu iriyas ma'aseh ha'egel, and I see that the Jewish people are also going to make the egel. K'sha'avo al Har Sinai litein lahem ha'Torah, when I come to Har Sinai to give them the Torah, shomtim echad mitat romolin shali, they're going to take one of my representatives, one of my symbols. They're going to take one of my ministers, and they're going to anger me with it. The Chsivit says, Pnei Shor Mismol, there was a face of the ox on the side of the heavenly throne, because the Jewish people experienced this incredible vision at Har Sinai, and they saw that there is an ox which represents a certain power up in heaven. And when the Jewish people were left without a leader, they said, we need to do something, we need to arrange for something. So they said, well, we don't have Moshe. Instead, we'll take one step above Moshe. We'll go up there in heaven and we'll draw down the face of the ox, and we're going to have that be our leader.
Why the ox?
So they talk about why the ox. They say because the ox represents gevura in the world, judgment and severity, and they felt that in terms of war and facing any enemies, that would be their best. The question is, so from here it suggests that they were planning on making an ox. The only problem is, if they had this vision of the ox, and they were throwing the gold in, according to one pshat, as we discussed yesterday, they had this plate with the word alei shor on it, which Moshe had used to bring up Yosef from the river. Then why does the calf come up?
Why not?
Up there, it's a full-grown ox. So umashalo hoya shor. So he quotes Pirish Asif Seikoin, an incredible pshat. God did that to mock the Jewish people. Because if it was a god or some kind of real leader, it wouldn't need to grow up, it wouldn't need to mature. And this calf needs to eat grass until it grows up and becomes an ox. What?
So God help make the eagle.
Well, God may put in a little adjustment. God said, really, you want that? All right, I'll give you. And out comes this little baby cow. And it was a big joke. Nimtze shemasha haya egel lefia emes. The reason why it turns into a calf, haya siba me'es hamakom, that was all directed by Hashem, kedei levazosam levaysham, to shame the Jewish people, to disgrace them. Amlam le'eina roim amase shahaya egel. So, but the problem is, anyone who sees it from the outside, would think that the Jewish people wanted to make a calf. Now we talk about the golden calf. You have a question ever occurred to you? Why baby calf? You want someone to lead you. You get a full grown ox.
How big was the golden? Was there a representation? Was it full?
So we would say it would be the same size as a standard calf.
The rest of the
That's a good question. Where did the rest of the gold? I imagine that gold you can turn something into using the gold more or using it less. But there is a website called torahmath.org, which I had the privilege of being a part of, and in one of the submissions is how much gold was in the golden calf. And not only how much gold was in it, but what would be the equivalent value of it. You can check it out if you want, torahmath.org. But we assume that it was the size of a regular golden calf. So would that have mean maybe it had thicker legs or some kind of platform or something? According to the way he's saying it, there would have been enough gold for there to have been a full. I don't know. Was it hollow? I mean, we assumed in the website that it was solid gold.
A day less than 1 year old, right?
But talk to a farmer.
We just learned this. Rabbi Meir says that a day is like.
Right, but in the rules of things growing, no one's going to say. But the question is, how big is a calf after a year? That's right. Only one, and it's not technically a sacrifice, and that's the red cow. Is it because of the egel? Maybe. The red cow is used to.
Egel could have been male. No one says it's a female cow.
Oh, but it's all shore. The Torah says shore or par, but we don't have cows. Okay, it's a good point, especially since Rashi quotes in Parshas Chukas that the para aduma is brought to clean up the mess of her son.
That's why it's a bull and not a cow, because we have to being.
Maybe. Okay.
the species.
Well, we're assuming all bovines are within the same category. So ox, cow, steer, they're all within the same, right? Right. I don't know if when the Torah says you can bring a shore, that it comes to exclude, for example, the longhorn steer. I imagine that technically that would be kosher as long as it's a kosher ox. Right. Well, yeah. It would have to be a bull, not a. It would have to be a bull, not a steer. But yes. Okay. Okay, let's go somewhere else before we get into all the bull puns. The bull pens. So therefore the Torah doesn't use the word egel, because that would have reminded the Jewish of the sins of the Jewish people. Because in fact what comes out is the calf. But that's why the Torah instead says ox. Below od ella. The reason why the ox comes first, and it's listed first as the first of the offerings, that Hashem looked into the matter and found through his investigation that the Jewish people were not guilty, because the fact is that since what they tried to do, which is to bring out an ox, didn't happen, it was a disgrace for them. So it turns out that even the action that the Jewish people were trying to do was compromised, according to this explanation of the Sifsei Kohen. So he says, when what we talk about is that the Jewish people had decent intentions, they were trying to do the right thing, but the actions were still wrong. But he's saying now the action actually wasn't what they had intended it to be. So there's something lacking. It's as if it was not only good intentions on a bad action, but even the bad action didn't turn out what it was, so the bad action can't even be fully associated with them. Well, even if they did tshuva, you've still got the sin that's hanging around. That's David HaMelech says, "V'chatasi negdi samid," that even though he was forgiven and everything, he held the sin before him always. Now we are supposed to do that to ourselves. The Gemara makes it very clear, and we paskin like this. Even if you did tshuva for something on one Yom Kippur, next year you're supposed to remember not just the sins from this year, but the sins from the previous years before. Even though anyone else is prohibited from mentioning to you, "I remember that time when you did that avera." That's a lav d'oraisa when you remind someone of their past in a negative way. But for ourselves, we are supposed to remind ourselves of this. So he says, with this, we can understand an interesting verse in Tehillim. It says, in Tehillim, where David HaMelech is describing the sin of the golden calf, there it says, Vayomiru es kvodam, and they exchanged their true honor, betavnis shor ochel esa, for the image of an ox that eats grass. Why does David have to mention that eats grass? Or doesn't eat? What difference does that make? If they made a golden calf, why does David call it an ox? If it was in fact a calf. Al-Lagalas Lanu Abizayin, David HaMelech in Tehillim is trying to reveal to us the shame, the disgrace of the Jewish people. Shekiblu ba Yisrael, that the Jewish people received, that sort of slap from Hashem. Shelo bashor k'mosho hayusav. They didn't come an ox like they had intended. Al Tavnisa dahane egel, what came was a calf. By Yitzarach lachal esav achi is gadol, and they had to they had to eat grass till it would grow. Anyway, all of that is the explanation of the golden calf. So that's why the Torah begins here with the word shor. That's to add why the Jewish people were so forgiven. Because they wanted an ox. And the calf came out, and they were embarrassed by it. The people who were doing this looked silly in the eyes of all the people. People who do sins and they are shamed by it, they are forgiven for it. Shame is possibly the most difficult of all suffering in the world, especially real shame. So even though these people were trying to commit on some level, it might not have been real idol worship, but it's within that category of idol worship. But when they tried to make it and everyone came to watch, and they said, "Behold, your new leader, here comes the ox," and this little baby calf came out, and everyone looked at them and said, "This is our leader, what's wrong with you?" So that shame that they experienced was part of their forgiveness. That's what it sounds like. It spoke, but it sounds like it ate grass. Right, so even if you could argue, if you wanted to, that it just means a calf which would need to eat grass if it would want to. Yeah, right. But the simple reading, I don't know, what don't oxen eat grass too? I don't know. But it means it needs to eat grass to grow, right? That's shame. That's shame.
Shouldn't it be something more?
It's amazing how that works. But when a person experiences shame for doing something wrong, in heaven that person is forgiven. That's still shame is shame. That's what we're saying.
At the very least, they regret it.
Right.
Deeply.
So he says, "Mishim hachi asa shor l'chalak karbanos." That's why the ox is mentioned first. V'shemizeh Hashem shel shor, because the term shor nodash in his chartuv in his baishu, he says they regretted, they were embarrassed. B'vadai sheroy liar sarosh l'karbanos, because that's part of bringing a carbon is to subdue yourself, to come before Hashem and admit your wrongdoing, and so the shor represents the beginnings of that feeling of regret and shame. He didn't intervene; he just put in his little joke there. Yeah. Well, we would assume it's because it would be difficult for the Jewish people to recover from this otherwise. And Hashem is always cheating. He's always putting in the right person, the right this, just to make sure that we end up in the right place. Yeah. And I think anyone, if they look back in their life, should be able to find places where they were going to do something wrong, and then someone happened to arrive there, or something happened, and that was out of the ordinary, that kind of pulled them away from it, and then this happens all the time, and then they have to give thanks to Hashem for that. So this was an example. On the other hand, the Gemara uses the famous expression "Ganva b'machtarta elakar karya," that the thief in the tunnel prays to God. So as he's about to break through the wall, he gives prayer to God. God, please help me. Make sure that
not home, he doesn't kill me.
Right. So with the davening, Hashem should help him steal. But yeah, that's what we do. Okay, page Kuf Tes. So it's interesting that he doesn't really talk about Lag Bomer. He doesn't talk about the Omer in Parshas Emor. But Emor discusses the Yamim Tovim, and in it there is this line which seems to connect to the holy day, which today is. So let's look at Siman Tes on page Kuf Tes. Yerushalmi the Rosh Hashanah. He quotes the Yerushalmi in the Rosh Hashanah, quoting the verse, Ki mi gadol. Who is this amazing people like we are? Eze uma ka'umazu. What a nation. What nation is like our nation? But Noach Sheba'olam, typically the way it works in the world, Adam Yesh Lo Din, a person who's about to face judgment, Lovish Chorim, dresses in black. You dress as if it's somber and serious, and even these people who look like they've never worn a suit in their life, right, they dress them up. They have to look like things are really serious. Because you don't know what your judgment is going to be. We're not like this. Loshin levenim, we dress in white. Misatvin levenim, we wrap ourselves in white. Megalchem ziknam, they shave their beard. Va'ochlim v'shosim, they eat and they drink. Esmechim, we party on Rosh Hashanah. V'yodim, we know Shekadosh Baruch Hu osam nisim. Hashem will take care of us. But this is difficult. Why do we need to compare ourselves to the rest of the world when it comes to this? What makes the Jewish people special when it comes? What this should be is how dear Hashem is to us, how dear we are to Hashem, that we trust that He's going to allow us to come out of judgment vindicated. But why do we make this about the difference between us and them? Perik Aleph de Yom Amruzal Gedola Teshuva, greatest Teshuva. Shafilu Yachid Sha'asa Teshuva, one person does Teshuva, Mochlen Lo L'Chala Olam, he is forgiven, and the entire world can be forgiven for him. A statement in the Gemara, and our rabbis are not exaggerating. Our rabbis are saying that one person can do Teshuva, and the whole world can be forgiven because of that one person. This is such a difficult line that Reb Tzadok HaKohen in Tekanos HaShavim gives this 50 pages or something to try to explain this line. How could it be that one person can do tshuva and the whole world should be forgiven? Well, he's not saying that. That's not the simple understanding of the Gemara. The Gemara doesn't say you could throw the balance towards the good. He says one person does teshuva, he is forgiven, and the entire world is forgiven. V'udavar tema. This is a strange thing. One person does teshuva, and the whole world should be forgiven. That sounds like the attribute of judgment is at a disadvantage here. Now, the Gemara tells us that Rabbi Shimon, we talked about this yesterday, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai had a son, Rabbi Lazar Bar Shimon, who accepted upon himself Yisurim, suffering, V'shel Rabbeinu HaKadosh, at the same time, Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon took on suffering, and the world was in such a good place because of his suffering. And that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, he felt like he should do this too, and he took suffering on himself as well. Hayarevach gadol ba'olam, everything was amazing in the world. The economies were thriving, everything was amazing. So you do see the power of one person to save the whole world. He says, Dilma Yisurim Shani, but that's only true when it comes to suffering. Suffering somehow has the power to create a merit beyond anything that we can describe. Suffering is a difficult subject in general. We tend to discourage. We certainly don't afflict ourselves. For tzaddikim, they live in a different world. And in that world, suffering, there's something called Yisurim Shel Ahava. Suffering, which are the expression of love between Hashem and the person and Hashem. And if you're not in that world, it doesn't make any sense. But there is the world of din, there's a world of judgment, there's a world of severity. And in that world, there is this intense relationship that can be created between someone and Hashem through Yisurim. So that can channel into our world into great merit that can then bring great things. But tshuva lechuda, just tshuva itself, in tam usvara lamu kach, there's no reason why it should be so. And the answer that he gives is a beautiful explanation, which I think sums up the secret of what Lag BaOmer is partially about. B'yesh lomar, we know, sheyadua, everybody knows, sheYisrael hem goy achad ba'aretz. The Jewish people are one nation in the land. We say that in the Shabbos davening. V'chol Yisrael hem guf achad. All the Jewish people are one body. V'chol echad mi Yisrael ever echad. And everyone is considered to be one limb, which means there are 600,000 general souls. The body is made up of, even though it's 365 sinews, only 248 limbs, but those are general limbs. Within each limb, there's different parts. And so there's a total of 600,000 parts to the collective body of the Jewish people, and every person represents one Aver. Uba Yaakov, Kara Kasuv Nefesh. When the Torah lists the descendants of Yaakov who go down to Egypt, it says Shivim Nefesh. Nefesh as in one soul. Uba Esav, much less people, it calls them Nefashos. Because we, the Jewish people, are one body. Because the Jewish people are one body and each person is one limb, that's why when one person does teshuvah, we forgive the whole world, the rest of the body, the rest of the Jewish people. And he's going to explain that deeper. And let's take a look. There's a halacha in the halachas of karbanos. Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon omrim. Minayin la'omer ragla shel zu ola. If a person says, the leg of this animal shall be a korban ola. Shekula ola, the halacha is that the entire animal becomes a korban ola. Shenamar, as it says, kala sheyitin mimenu la'Hashem, whatever parts of it shall be given to Hashem, keshehu omer yihya kodesh, it shall be holy. The Rabbah says kula means that even if you only sanctify a part of the animal, the entire animal becomes holy. That's a quote from the Gemara in Tamura. V'amrinan hasam, the imakdish ever echad min behema. If a person sanctifies only one limb, iboy v'lo ifshita, the Gemara leaves it as an unresolved question. Iasira kula begizav avoda, does the entire animal become prohibited to shear and to work? The Gemara says, certainly if you make a part of the animal an ola, then the whole thing becomes. The question is, if you sanctify, you don't make it a korban, but you just sanctify a part of the animal, does the entire animal become prohibited to be sheared, to take its wool or hair and use it for yourself or to work with? Upaska harambam perik aleph mehilchas meila, and the Rambam paskins l'chumra that we have to be stringent. This is amazing. Imken k'shahayachid asa teshuva. When one individual does real teshuva, halo niskadesh ever echad mikala aguf. That's sanctifying one limb within the whole body, which is the Jewish people. So now we have a halachic question. Without question, the sanctity spreads into the whole animal, but we have a problem as to whether you're allowed to work with or shear or cut away from that animal for your own purposes. V'hamekatrigim, so the prosecution, eina yicholim le'eskarev od b'Yisrael, they can no longer prosecute against the Jewish people, because the entire body is prohibited from shearing and from working. In other words, by the Rambam paskening, that if you sanctify even one portion of an animal, the entire animal becomes prohibited for someone to make use of their own, or to shear or cut any of the hair. The Rambam is paskening that if one limb of the Jewish people becomes holy, then the entire Jewish people are off limits. So when that happens, the angels above, who are the forces that drive the enemies of the Jewish people, they have to have legal Torah rights to rule over the Jewish people. So that's why one person who sanctifies himself creates this boundary and protection for the entire Jewish people. Amazing. The Gemara tells us, the Gemara in Sukkah, that says, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said that if he was on the level that he could protect all the people of his generation. And if you count him and his son, Rabbi Shimon, then they could protect all the people from the beginning of creation until today. And then if you added one more person, Yosam ben Izyahu, whatever the case is, whoever that person was, if you would add him, we could have created this protection around all the Jewish people for all of time. The power of the tzaddik is not just for the Torah that he gives, but the level of protection of the Jewish people. So we talked about this yesterday. We said that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai brought a Torah down into the world. That was a Torah that would form a protection of the Jewish people in exile. The Jewish people are always in danger, and we, not just danger from without, which is what we call the Shibud Malchias, the suffering and the persecution, but what happens as a result of that persecution is we start to challenge ourselves, we start to walk away. We see how many people today, in a country where you have freedom of religion, where you are able to be whatever you want, how many people the sourdough within their dough, the poison which is inside them of the counsel of the serpent, takes them towards becoming assimilated and moving away from the Jewish people. And the reason why that happens, as we explained yesterday, was because you don't have that power, that deeper level of connection between Hashem and the Jewish people. What you need is the Torah of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who brought the Zohar into the world, who brought the deeper level of Torah, who brought a deeper level of connection between Hashem and the Jewish people, to allow the Jewish people to continue to survive in exile. And now according to what he's saying, there's another layer here, which is that it's not just that the Torah itself, which is just the studying of the Torah, or as we discussed yesterday, the passion of Torah, the fire of Torah, the parts of Torah that make you feel emotionally connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But there's also the koach of the tzaddik. And the power of the tzaddik is that just his personal connection, whatever he does, even without interacting with other people, the power of the tzaddik, it provides a protection, provides an inspiration, provides a connection between the Jewish people and Hashem. And that's what he's saying, that the individual who creates this one limb that becomes so sanctified, it becomes kodesh. He's talking about the example of someone that does teshuvah. How much more so, just the tzaddik who sanctifies his entire life, that becomes a protection. That's why the Ben Ish Chai, who wrote the Va'amartim Kol Achai, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, so one of the lines is Zechusa Yagen Aleinu, his merit should protect us, Hu Yamlitz Tov Ba'adenu, he should be someone who speaks good for us. We're still talking about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai arguing for us and protecting us, because that's the power of the great tzaddik. And the greater the tzaddik is, the greater protection he is for the Jewish people. And if, as we've said, the Jewish people are not just one body in terms of all the 600,000 souls who are around today, but the Jewish people are one body going through all of time, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is as much a part of the body as we are today. So it's interesting that his son, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, had to go through Yisurim, had to go through the suffering in order to become that protection for the Jewish people. But Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, he accomplished this simply through his great tzidkus. Anyway, back to where we are. And I'm just saying, we see from this Torah of the Zera Shimshon how powerful the tzaddik is, that his sanctity can then spread by default to all of us. He says, "Mikolshkein im nomar k'moshe amru al pasik v'nafal mimenu rav." It says that many shall fall. Shafilu yachid nechshav be'enav rav, that even if one person falls, it's considered like many who fall. Sha'afkan kol yachid v'yachid nikra ever shaneshama teluya bo. Every limb, every individual is considered like a limb that the body depends on. There's a halacha. In other words, we discussed this. There's this question: if someone says the foot of this olah, the foot of this animal should be an olah. So we said that we seem to rule like the opinion that the whole animal becomes a korban. Says the Gemara, that's only true if you say the foot. If you sanctify a part of the body, which if you would remove that part, the animal would be unable to live, then without question, everyone agrees that the entire animal becomes holy. So if a person was to say the heart of this animal should become an olah, or the head of this animal should become an olah, there everyone would agree the whole animal becomes an olah. With the leg, we rule like that opinion, but it's not unanimous, not everyone agrees with that. But if you do the heart or the head, everyone agrees the entire animal becomes holy, because that limb is so essential to the body that whatever happens to it. So he says, actually my mashal isn't the best mashal. It's not like when one person becomes holy that it's like the leg of the animal has become holy. We can't afford to lose a single Jew. We consider the loss of each individual Jew as the loss of a limb that the entire body depends on. So every Jew there is no Jew who is just the leg of the Jewish people. Everyone is like the heart or the mind or some essential part. And there he says, then everyone would agree that any single individual Jew who purifies and sanctifies himself, pashta kedusha bekula, the holiness spreads throughout. That's what the Yerushalmi means. Is there a people like our people? This comes because we are the nation. We are one nation, one body. It's about the fact that we are one nation. That's what makes us this level of connection to Hashem. The 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva died because they were all great people. But lo nahagu kavod zeh lezeh. They didn't show each other respect. They didn't give each other the dignity that was required of people of their stature. And although they didn't insult each other, it doesn't say. They never said anything negative. They just didn't show each other the proper honor. And the commentaries explain because they were all into their personal growth and they were all focused on themselves, which is not a bad thing. You miss the fact other people around you, they're not just other people. It's not just that there are other people around you and we're expected to be nice to other people. Echad ba'aretz. The Jewish people are Goy Echad v'Guf Echad. We are one body. If we start seeing each other as another limb in the same body, it's hard to do, but the Torah is trying to tell you, v'ahavta l'recha kamocha, and we're just not getting it. No, not you should like someone else. You should like someone else like you love yourself. You show someone else respect like you show yourself respect. It's way beyond where we are going. And that's the lesson that the 5 students of Rabbi Akiva who survived did get. They did show each other this respect. May we merit in the zechus of the Tana Eloki, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and the Torah which he brought down to us, that all of us should truly appreciate what Klal Yisrael is. We are one body, one person, and we'll be zocheh to do Kabbalas HaTorah ki ish echad b'lev echad once again.
Amen.